FD5, yes, I know it's not the FD7, okay? I know that's the new one. I don't have it yet. That one's coming in. But while we wait, why not review the FD5 since we already covered the FD3 on the channel? Some of you guys liked the FD3. Some of you guys didn't like the FD3. I would say this right now. If you like the FD3, you'll like the FD5. If you don't like the FD3, you won't like the FD5 because the sound signature of those two IEMs are almost identical. They're very, very, very close. The little differences will be in the details and the overall refinement of the sound. The FD5 is a little bit more refined than the FD3. If I had to pick one for my money though, I would buy the FD5, not the FD3. The FD3 for me is good, but it's just a little bit too veiled for me. Like there's not enough detail there for my liking. The FD5 has sufficient detail for the price, even though the sound signature is still a bass heavy V shape, which is really not my preference. I would pick the FD5 over the FD3 any day of the week. Now, having said all that, how does this actually sound? Let's jump into it. Hey friends, Timmy, welcome back to another video on Giz Audio, and we're out here. It's daytime by the pool. So finally, we're not filming in the dark anymore. But you can let me know what you prefer though, daytime or nighttime. Just leave that in the comments below. So let's start off with a sound breakdown of the FD5, starting with the bass. Now the bass here, there's a lot of it. It's a dynamic driver with a dynamic bass. You feel everything. There's a lot, and to me, a little bit too much as well. Not too much in the sense of it's too powerful, but I would say too much in a sense where it's not really the most well controlled. It bleeds into the mid-range definitely, and what that does really is it kind of veils a bit of the mid-range. So vocals and instruments that live in the mid-range area just don't come across as clean as they should, or not as well presented as they should due to that bit of bleeding. I wouldn't say it's bloat, or I wouldn't say it's muddy in any way. I don't think it's powerful enough to give that kind of effect. It's just a little bit veiled, I would say. It bleeds just enough to affect the mid-range area, and that to me is not really my preferred signature. I know there's a lot of people who would love this because they just like bass, they want the warmth, they want the punch. Then this might just be for you. It is a very mainstream tuning after all. A lot of people do like bass, so I'm not saying that my preference is the correct one in any way. I'm just saying that I don't prefer it because it just bleeds a little bit too much. I love my vocals, all right? But for those of you who just love bass, you don't really care much about mid-range, then sure, like you would probably like this. Now, in terms of bass power, it's definitely there. You need to get a deep enough fit, but it's definitely powerful. You feel it. Bass heads will be happy about this power of bass. So bass-wise, again, it's a dynamic bass. You feel it, it's powerful. There's a lot of it. If you like that, you'll like it. If you don't like the bleed, you won't like it. On to the mid-range of this. Now, I touched a little bit on that already in the bass segment, is that it is a bit veiled. There's a bit of a bass bleed in the lower mid-range, and in the mid-range itself, there's a bit of a dip as well. So what that does is that it really kind of hides vocalist, it hides the mid-range, you know, the extra bass with a little dip. It just doesn't really work well for a mid-range type listener. If you listen to a lot of vocals, if you listen to pianos, orchestras, strings, anything of that sort, and that's what your ears want to focus on, that's what you like, then the FD5 is not what you want. It's really not. This is bass and treble. This is fun, V-shaped, mainstream signature, not a lot of mid-range. Now, if you made it this far into the video, I have a special surprise for you. I'm about to tell you how to fix the tuning on this to make it so that mid-range comes across more full, more forward, or less veiled, if you will. Now, it's not gonna solve the problem completely, but it's gonna improve the sound signature of this quite significantly, at least for me. If you love mid-range, you wanna do this. Now, this is not anything complicated. It is EQing, and not EQing in a sense where it's, you know, you're on your computer, you're going through all these different softwares and stuff like that. To be honest, I don't even know how to do that. I'm not an EQ expert in any way whatsoever. The EQ I'm about to show you, you can do on your phone. And if you have a Samsung phone like I do, you can actually copy just the whole thing to a T. But if you have other devices, you can do the same thing as well. The settings are generally the same, or if not very, very similar. And here you go. This is my EQ setting. As you can see, I lowered the 250 Hertz by like a decibel or FD2. And what this does is that it kind of unveils the mid-range a bit. It tones down the bass bleed that's in the FD5, letting loose more of the mid-range, giving it more clarity, more forwardness. And to be honest, this alone fixes a lot of the problem with the FD5. But if you want to take it a step further, you can even bump up the 1K Regent to get rid of that little bit of a dip to really make your vocalist sound a lot more forward, if you will. But that's not really too necessary. The biggest problem is with the bass bleed. So lowering that 250 Hertz, it's already going to change the sound significantly in a good way. So that EQing you can actually do with the FD3 as well. If you own the FD3, just try it out. Just try it out. Trust me, if you're thinking, nah, there's no way that changes the sound that much, there's no way that improves the sound that much, just try it, please. Just give it a try. If you think the FD3 and FD5 sounds good already, try that. It's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna sound so much better, I swear. All right, moving on from that, we have the treble area. And this is where this thing actually does a fairly good job. There's good amount of treble here, while at the same time, I don't ever perceive it as coming across too harsh in any way. Like, it comes across quite nice. I never felt like it was too bright in any way, but I didn't really think it was smooth either. So it kind of lives in this kind of middle ground where it's not scratchy, it's not smooth, it's just okay, it's decent. But I would say, to summarize all that thought, it's done in a way where it is inoffensive. Now, not the best treble I've heard, but it's done in a way that is inoffensive, but you still get the treble, you still get the little micro details that comes with the, the little nuances that treble can bring. And yeah, there's really nothing to complain about the FD5's treble. I like it. It's on a little bit of the bright side, maybe if I'm nitpicking, but overall, it's just very non-offensive. Good energy. Yeah, nothing to complain here. On to technical performance, details, soundstage, imaging, and all that. The details on these for $350, I would say is on par with a lot of IEMs around this range. I would say it's decent, it's nothing that is spectacular, but it's not a detriment at this price either. Now, if I bring up my scale, as you can see, the FD5 lands slightly ahead of Starfield, just ever so slightly. Now, it's not really gonna outright destroy the Starfield, it's nothing like that. I would say that it's just slightly better, and that's not really, again, a detriment to the FD5. That just goes to show how good the Starfield really is. The Starfield and all the Moondrop offerings, they're fantastic, man. They're fantastic IEM for the price. The FD5 is just one of your, I would say, overall average IEM for the price. It's not really like impressive, but it's not really disappointing either, I would say. So yeah, detail retrieval wise, it lands around the same area as the Starfield. When it comes to imaging and soundstage, I would say the soundstage on here, man, it is okay. It's not really like narrow, like in your head or anything, but it's not wide. I wouldn't say it's impressively wide. And I think that has to do with the bass. The bass being the way it is, a little bit bleedy, a little bit too much, sometimes kind of veils the overall grandeur of the song, because you hear a lot of that low end, a lot of that dark, kind of warmish low end. So that really kind of makes it feel a little bit smaller than it should, if you will. Now, if you did the EQ setting like I asked you to, or I suggest for you to, you will feel that the soundstage actually feels more open. Yeah, try that. So yes, in conclusion, soundstage is now not impressive, but it's not narrow, it's just meh, average. Imaging, on the other hand, is also average. Yeah, you can't really tell too much of where the mid-range instruments are. Sometimes they just feel like they're blended together in the mid-range. So imaging-wise, it's average to okay or bad. All right, I think that is it for the review of the FD5. Now, do I recommend this IEM? At $350, the FD5, does it compete against other IEMs of the same price or of similar prices? So let's look at the competition, right? At $300, we have what? We have the $280 Oxygen, right? We have the Blessing 2 at $320, Blessing 2 DAS at $330, and we even have, I would even throw in the Bravery in there, C Audio Bravery at $250. Now, all those IEMs are gonna be what you be considering when you're looking to buy the FD5, or if you're looking to spend this kind of money. So where does the FD5 FD5 slot. I would say the FD5 is quite behind a lot of those IEMs. I would say the Blessing 2 and the Blessing 2 Dust completely destroys the FD5 in sheer level of tuning, how natural everything sounds, and also the level of details in the 2 and 2 Dust is significantly better. The Oxygen would be the most direct competitor with the FD5. I would say the Oxygen tune better. The bass is just as strong as the FD5 while not ever bleeding into the mid-range in any way. So it's much more well-controlled bass while keeping a similar level of power. So the Oxygen is just the better, I would say, bass-wise than the FD5. When it comes to treble area, though, the FD5 is really good in the treble area. There's not a lot of IEMs that beats the FD5 in the treble. I would say all the ones I mentioned, the FD5 is the best here when it comes to just energy, treble area, all right? The Bravery, out of everything I mentioned, is my favorite one because it's tuned very similar to an Only VX, which is a $2,500 IEM. Tune is similar. I really like the VX, so of course I'm gonna really like the Bravery. It doesn't have the details of the VX, of course. Now when it comes to details, it's also slightly bit behind the FD5, but the tuning on this is just, it blows the FD5 out of the water. So with all that said, what should you do? Should you get the FD5? Should you not get the FD5? I would say this, if you don't have a $300 IEM yet, I would say sample it. I wouldn't say blind buy this. I would say sample it first, and if you really like it in comparison to other IEMs, then sure, go ahead, purchase it, right? But it's not something that I would say that you should blind buy. You should definitely sample this one first. Now, I will say, if you own the FD3, or if you tried the FD3 and you like it and you haven't really bought the FD3 yet, and you're looking to see if FD5 is better, I would say go for the FD5. FD3 for me is a little bit more veiled, more so than the FD5 even. So I would say that if you can spare the money, I would go for the FD5. Of course, if your budget is 100 something, then the FD3 is your only option for that. But yeah, if you like the FD3 sound, then you're gonna like the FD5 sound. But if you have $300, you don't know what to spend it on, I would say hold off. Don't spend it on the FD5 just yet. I would say if you can sample it first, sample it. All right, that is it for the review of the FD5 by FIIO. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you made it this far into the video. Might as well. I release videos on the regular about IEM, Sci-Fi, non-Sci-Fi, everything. I just love audio stuff. Maybe someday I'll even do headphones. You never know. Oh, before I forget, I have an IEM ranking list in the description below as well, alongside a link to my Facebook group where you can watch all these videos early, join the community, and just overall have fun in the group. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for making it all the way till the end. You guys are amazing. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. Bye.